Good afternoon and welcome to this post-election night edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Gonzalez, your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a packed program today. In just a little bit, our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz and our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez will be joining me to talk about races in their respective areas of coverage here along the border. But as we just said, all eyes were on Texas last night for the midterm elections. The candidates included a seminarian, a Tejano singer, and at least two men accused of being unfaithful to their wives. News Nation's Xavier Walton has our top story.
Drama certainly did not disappoint here in the Lone Star State. It was a late night, early morning, and the action is not over yet. Republican Senate candidates are heading for a runoff. Let's start with the Texas GOP. Let's start with incumbent Senator John Cornyn and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton set to go head-to-head on May 26th. After splitting the vote Tuesday, our partners at Decision Desk HQ show Cornyn leading with 42% to Paxton's nearly 41%. That's how close it is. Congressman Wesley Hunt considered a long shot, finishing with a little more than 13% of the vote. Now, this was the most expensive Senate primary in U.S. history. Look at those numbers. Cornyn alone spending more than $71 million.
I refuse to allow a flawed, self-centered, and shameless candidate like Ken Paxton risk everything we've worked so hard to build over these many years. There is simply too much at stake in this midterm election for our state and for our country.
Here's what we proved tonight. While the money may be on his side, the people are on our side. Yes. And in Texas, the people always win. Yes.
Now to the Texas Democratic Senate primary, almost as heated, with moderate state rep James Tallarico squaring off with progressive Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. DDHQ projects Tallarico as the winner with just over 53% of the vote. And while no Democrat has won a statewide race in Texas since 1994, Tallarico says he is confident things are changing.
The number of young people who showed up to vote in this election is unprecedented. The number of Texans who have never voted before but showed up in this election is unprecedented. The number of independents and Republicans who voted in this Democratic primary is unprecedented. This is proof that there is something happening in Texas.
And at the start, we talked about drama, talk about problems at the polls, which led state courts to extend voting hours in some counties, but the state Supreme Court issued a stay of that order, throwing the ballots cast after 7 p.m. into limbo, including in Dallas County, which is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's home base. Right now, it's unclear right now when this will be settled in the courts. Meantime, DDHQ projects that Congressman Dan Crenshaw loses to State Rep Steve Toth, and YouTuber Brandon Herrera will be in a runoff with Congressman Tony Gonzalez. From Austin, Xavier Walton, News Nation.
Now we're going to have more on El Paso Congressman Tony Gonzalez in just a moment with our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz. But getting back to the big race of the day, Senate race here, Republican primary race. Now, President Trump today, about 2 hours ago, as a matter of fact, teased that he would be making a much anticipated endorsement in the GOP Senate race, quote unquote, soon, and said that he's also planning to ask the rival candidate to drop out after he weighs in. Now, Trump on his social media platform, Truth Social, said that both Cornyn and Paxton ran great races, but not good enough, and that now this one must be, all caps, perfect. He said, quote, "I will be making my endorsement soon and will be asking the candidate that I don't endorse to immediately drop out of the race. Is that fair? Question mark. We must win in November." Now, the GOP Senate primary is really being seen as a test of the Make America Great Again brand here in the state of Texas, where President Trump won by 14 points in 2024's presidential election. Each of the three contenders, including Representative Wesley Hunt of Texas, touted their alignment with the president. But Trump, who has been known as the GOP kingmaker over the last decade, who has endorsed a slate of other Texas candidates, has stayed out of this Senate contest so far. He did tell reporters in early last month that he was taking a serious look at endorsing, and later said he likes all three of them, actually. Paxton, a firebrand conservative, was expected to benefit from Trump's base and led in the polls on Tuesday. But as we just heard from Xavier Walton, Cornyn had a slight edge as of this morning with more than 90% of the vote counted. Now, getting back to one of the candidates accused of infidelity, El Paso Congressman Tony Gonzalez. He wasn't the top vote getter, as you just heard, but he did manage to secure a runoff against YouTuber and gun manufacturer Brandon Herrera. Let's go out to our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, for more on this race. Julian?
Hi, Rudy. Good to be back. Yes, like you mentioned, this is one of the hottest congressional races in Texas, and one that has drawn a lot of attention and a lot of controversy. Mr. Gonzalez, the incumbent, was hit with those allegations of infidelity in what I can only characterize as a tragedy for what happened to his female staffer, who ended up setting herself on fire and succumbing to her injuries. Now, even though the Court of Public Opinion has already come up with its own verdict on Mr. Gonzalez continues to deny the allegations of any wrongdoing in this case. And just today, maybe an hour ago, he posted something, a statement expressing confidence in going on to a victorious runoff against Mr. Herrera. And I can tell you, Rudy, that the margin for the past election, primary election, in which these two candidates met, was razor thin. We're talking about less than 500 votes. Right now, in this primary, we're looking at a similar margin. Maybe the names have flipped, but it's still razor thin. And it's going to be very competitive. Now, as you probably know, there have been some developments in the past hour or so in this case, having to do with an ethics probe. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, explain what's going on with that a little bit for us.
Well, like I said, this is breaking news. The House announced that it's probably launching an ethics probe on these allegations. And this moves the whole issue to a new level. And that is public scrutiny, congressional rigor on the allegations. So this is something that Mr. Gonzalez is going to have to deal with as he goes into the May runoff election. Now, I've reached out to all the campaigns involved, and I'm still to hear from Brandon Herrera. However, last night he posted as well some more dialogue with his followers to the effect that Tony Gonzalez is going to be held accountable, and he sounds very confident that he's going to be the nominee when the dust settles in May. But definitely, this is a breaking news story. A lot of things are going on right now, and it is all on Tony Gonzalez to come out and face in the next few days.
Now, he has been getting calls to resign from both sides of the aisle in Congress. Has there been any indication that the congressman is even considering that? I mean, considering his last statement, kind of taking this almost as a victory heading into a runoff?
No, really. As far as indications, like I said, just a few minutes ago, he posted that he's looking forward to the runoff and that he's going to be victorious in the runoff. Now, he has not addressed the latest news about the ethics inquiry, but that's something, like I said, that he's going to have to carry and deal with in the next few days and weeks ahead.
Now, what are you hearing from folks on the ground out there, likely voters in this race? Obviously, all this really recent controversy, it's kind of heated up over the last couple weeks, has played a role. But have you heard in how this is playing a role for just the average voter?
Yes, I've been definitely following a whole number of Republican websites as well as individuals. And there's obviously some mixed feelings here. Obviously, a lot of people want accountability. They want to know the facts. They're probably looking forward to this ethics inquiry. On the other hand, there is concern about possibly the Republicans losing this Texas 23rd congressional seat. Let me tell you, it's not only the controversy with the incumbent and the very hard-charging tactics by the challenger, but also I got to tell you that on the Democratic side, one of the candidates, Kathy Padilla Stout, she she earned the she won the Democratic primary, and she got 30,000 votes, which is about 8,000 votes more than either Gonzalez or Brandon Herrera got. So there's definitely those two considerations being weighed by Republican followers.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens, especially with this ethics committee. Again, it is important to remember that right now Republicans control both the House and the Senate. So for something like this investigation being opened up, it could be a bad signal, it seems, for the runoff campaign for current sitting U.S. Representative Tony Gonzalez.
It's going to be a challenge for him, definitely.
All right. Thank you so much, Julian. We appreciate you joining us today. Stay with us, though. We're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be moving on down here to South Texas, where our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, is going to tell us a little bit about a few different races that have a very big impact, not just on South Texas, but how the nation's makeup in Congress could be looking come later this year and the beginning of next year. So stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Joining me now, in just a moment, joining me, South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. But another big congressional race on the Texas border was District 15, right here in the Rio Grande Valley, in the southernmost part of the state. Republican Congresswoman Monica de la Cruz ran unopposed, but the Democratic candidates were Tejano singer Bobby Pulido and emergency physician Dr. Ada Cuellar. Now, Pulido had no trouble defeating Cuellar. He garnered nearly 37,000 votes, more than 2-1 on the ballots over his opponent. Our Sandra Sanchez was at the Pulido celebration party last night. Sandra, tell us a little bit about what the now nominee for the Democratic side of District 15 had to say.
Right, Rudy. Two-time Latin Grammy winner Bobby Pulido, a very popular namesake here in South Texas, especially in Hidalgo County in this District 15, took the stage early. It was kind of a surprise to everyone. His crowd was raucous. There was about 500 people at his watch party. Coincidentally, I've been at Ada Cuellar's party just an hour prior, and there were very few people there. It was kind of obvious the way the votes were going to swing. You know, he told me all day that economics, healthcare spending, and border security and racial profiling in particular were top issues that he was concerned about. This is why he wanted to run for Congress. We have a little clip of what he told me.
I mean, the Rio Grande Valley, 40% of the people here speak Spanish, primarily Spanish, and the Supreme Court allowed them to actually profile based on your accent. So this is a very problematic issue that requires a lot of sensitivity from the White House and the administration because we are such a diverse population down here of Hispanics. You know, a lot of people look darker than some others. And I don't believe racial profiling is something that's good. And at the end of the day, it bothers me. It's our community. People are living in fear right now. We have to do something about it.
You know, for the first time, Rudy, he also mentioned last night water. We have spent hours talking about water here on this show. Mexico owes the United States water payable through the Rio Grande. We pay via the Colorado River. We've never missed a payment, but Mexico came in only paying us half of what they owed this last cycle that ended October 20th. You know, they paid like 800,000 acre feet. They owed 1.75 million. And we've mentioned the only sugar mill in the state shut down over a year ago. Farmers, ranchers are hard pressed right now. Dust is covering everything here. It's almost apocalyptic what we're living through. It looks like a desert, does not look like the Rio Grande Valley. And he said, you know, this is going to be a big issue. Well, coincidentally, that is Republican Congresswoman Monica de la Cruz's big issue. She has submitted several bills in Congress that we've talked about. She has met with officials in Mexico. She has spoken to President Trump about this. And so it was very obvious that Pulido was switching gears to go from the Democratic primary to now I'm going to turn and I'm going to face Republican Monica de la Cruz. Just to reiterate, she had no opponent, like you said. She was elected in 2022, and she turned this seat red for the first time. The congressional district of 15, it's very controversial. I think we have a map. The Texas legislature redrew it last year. There are 11 counties in this district, 611,000 total voters. Now, Monica De La Cruz, again, she didn't have an opponent, but she got about 30,000 votes. Bobby Pulido got almost 37,000 votes. And Democrats came out at almost 9%, where Republicans came out at just under 5% yesterday. So I think looking in November to the general, that Monica De La Cruz is going to have to fire up the Republicans, get them to come out. Earlier you mentioned Trump carried Texas by 14%. Well, he carried this district at 18%. So, people are seeing this as a referendum and trying to get Democratic Latino voters more involved. And I think last night showed that it did.
What's interesting, just kind of an informational note for the folks at home, and you can feel free to comment on this if you want, but just in the last couple of weeks, we saw basically parallels. We saw Bobby Pulido kind of hitch his wagon to the Tallarico campaign,
Yes.
both of them campaigning down here in the Rio Grande Valley a lot. And then we also saw Ada Cuellar kind of hitch her wagon to the Jasmine Crockett campaign. And it seems as if, those two different routes ended up kind of paying off. For the one route with Bobby Pulido kind of paid off as well. I'm kind of wondering if one helped the other in that situation. Did that help Tallarico down here in South Texas,
actually,
or
I
vice
looked
versa?
up some of those numbers. So in Hidalgo County, where McAllen is, Pulido got 20,654 votes, and Cuellar got 10,408 votes. Now, looking at the Tallarico Crockett, Tallarico got 41,000 votes in Hidalgo County. 20,300 in Cameron County. Jasmine Crockett got 18,700 in Hidalgo County and 11,000 in Cameron County. Those are big numbers for this part of South Texas border. So, lots of stuff we can just kind of, it's almost like sports reporting, just go down that rabbit hole and keep looking at this data. But we did have some other races that we wanted to mention.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the District 34 race. On the Republican side, there was a very clear winner, which is shocking because Eric Flores, it's a new name. Going back to what we were talking about, that Trump endorsement kind of being the gold standard for the Republican Party right now. He went up against a former congresswoman that had won a special election, once a longtime congressman of the 34th district.
Mayra Flores.
Mayra Flores, she beat longtime incumbent, Filemon Vela, when he retired early.
Right,
she
was
took
a
his
special
seat
election
during the
after
special
he retired,
election after
and
he
she
retired.
got that seat from June of 2022 to January 2023, so about 5 months.
Yeah, and she had that Trump endorsement during that. He chose to endorse someone else. Tell us a bit about that race.
Yeah, so Eric Flores, a former federal prosecutor, Army veteran, as you mentioned, got the Trump endorsement. He won 56% of the vote in District 34. Now, District 34 is a much smaller district. It used to include parts of Hidalgo County, but this whole redistricting changed things down here. So he doesn't live in District 34, which is interesting, which is Vicente Gonzalez didn't live in District 34 when they changed the district on him either at first. And so, he has kind of, people were saying, used Mayra Flores' name recognition, same last name. Mayra Flores, she was in Congress for 5 months, and she ran a last time 2 years ago. She lost. She lost again, and she's not been known to be a good loser. She tends to post things on social media, very angry. She's been a bit quiet today about it, but I wonder if it's over for her, if she's going to finally give up this. Now, Eric Flores is going to face Vicente Gonzalez. He used to be the congressman for District 15. He's been in District 34, and he got a good percentage of the vote. He won with 62% or 35,000 votes. So, if the district, the way it was looking before we all said this, it was questionable whether he could have gone up against Monica de la Cruz. And so, she took District 15, turned it red, and now, District 34 is clearly blue with Vicente Gonzalez, but Eric Flores could change things. I think the nation's watching. Everybody kept saying that last night. The nation is watching South Texas.
Yeah, and going back to what you had just mentioned about Mayra Flores and her previous losses in that district and in that race, it's, again, I think when you lose once, you kind of lose the eye of President Trump a little bit. You kind of lose his grace. In this case, seeing Eric Flores getting that endorsement, I think that was huge right out the gate, and I don't think many people expected it. I know, going back to Flores versus Flores here, I don't think there was a big expectation, even with that Trump endorsement, though, that this was going to be an outright victory for Eric Flores. I think a lot of folks expected. I think a lot of folks thought this was going to be going into a runoff, a battle between the two Flores names, but in this case, Eric Flores ended up taking it. So it just goes to show that, again, the president kind of the kingmaker in a lot of ways still when it comes to the Republican Party in Texas.
And as you mentioned at the top of the show, waiting to see who he endorses with regards to incumbent Senator Cornyn or the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, who are now in a runoff. And very much Trump could put his thumb on it and change that race right there.
And really quick, because we are running out of time a little bit, but I did want to talk about the 28th Congressional District, Henry Cuellar, who we've had on the program several times to talk about a whole myriad of different issues. How did that race go?
Well, so his district, 28, now includes a sliver of Hidalgo County, and he won with 58% of the vote. He got 9,500 votes in Hidalgo County. And this used to be a big stronghold of his years ago in Starr County, but they took Hidalgo County out of his district the last time, and now it's back, and he won very easily. He got 15,000 votes in his hometown in Webb County. His biggest challenger was out there, got about 12,000 votes, but he really showed well this far east. And
he's going to be going up against, it looks like Republican Tano Tijerina.
Tano Tijerina is the Webb County judge out there, and who at one point was a Democrat. He's very, very well known. It is going to be a race to watch.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much, Sandra. We appreciate you reporting on this. I know it was a long night last night covering all the different races, but we appreciate you. And we appreciate Julian, if you're still on the line. We appreciate your coverage as well. Stay with us. Got a couple more headlines when we come back. We'll Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles. A lawmaker says a large immigration detention camp in West Texas is closed to visitors and attorneys due to a measles outbreak. U.S. Representative Veronica Escobar says there are 14 active measles cases at the Camp Montana ICE Detention Center on the Fort Bliss Army Base, and 112 people are being isolated. The camp is in Escobar's district, and she says it will remain closed until at least March 19th. Escobar said Camp East Montana is run by Acquisition Logistics, which is a private corporation with no prior experience in running immigration detention facilities. She said she is worried for the hundreds of employees at the center, plus the dozens of Texas National Guard members stationed there as well. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Camp East Montana, as the facility is known, opened last year. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem defended her agency in testimony and under questioning at a Senate hearing. She appeared before the Judiciary Committee on Tuesday in her first congressional hearing since protesters Renee Good and Alex Preddy were killed in Minneapolis by Homeland Security officers in January. Noem blamed violent protesters, as she's calling them, for contributing to the chaos officers encountered. Retiring Republican Senator Tom Tills of North Carolina called her leadership a, quote, disaster. Another Republican pushed her to explain why her department paid more than $200 million for an ad campaign she appeared in last year encouraging migrants to leave the country voluntarily. That's something myself and San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera talked about extensively on one episode of Border Report Live. Now, Noem defended those ads, saying they were effective and went through the regular department bidding process. Quote, well, they were effective in your name recognition, end quote. That's what Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana told her. Noam, who is set to appear in front of a House committee today, will bring you the latest on tomorrow's edition of Border Report Live. And don't forget, you can stay informed on all things shaping the U.S.-Mexico border as Border Report Live brings you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in podcast form. You can listen there now at the apps at the bottom of your screen, Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, and you can get the audio and video version of Border Report Live on YouTube. That is going to do it for us today. Thank you so much to our Julian Resendiz in El Paso reporting on the races out there. Sandra Sanchez here in South Texas reporting on all the different and very critical races happening down here in the Rio Grande Valley. For them, my name is Rudy Mireles in Harlingen, Texas. We'll see you next time.